Hey Justin, how are you?
Hey, what's up, Victoria?
Thanks so much for meeting with me today. As I explained in our pre-correspondence, as a part of my coursework for my MBA program, we've been tasked to team up with Aim to Flourish, which is a UN-supported initiative that highlights innovative businesses that are making an impact on the world. So the UN has set 17 sustainability development goals that they hope to reach in the next 10 years. One of them is quality education, and I believe that Fascinate Inc. wholeheartedly meets this initiative. The UN has stated that there are 17 million children and adolescents who lack the proficiency in reading, math, and science. And I just love to chat about Fascinate Inc. with you. So can you give me a little history on it?
Sure. So I founded Fascinate Inc. in 2017. I was a year and some change out of college. I was the kid that was disengaged from science and math historically when I was around middle and high school. And so ended up being in a really fortunate position to do well in those subjects in college, which ended up catapulting my career much faster than I thought it would. And so I thought, how do I go back and give kids like me from communities where I'm from access to those same kinds of opportunities, but also how do I inspire them and excite them to actually be motivated to pursue those opportunities in the first place? And so I created Fascinate to achieve those goals. So a few ways that we achieve it are through after school programs that we do for kids all over New York City, through professional trainings that I do for teachers and educators all over the world. And also speaking engagements where I tell my personal story and inspire students all over the world to pursue careers in STEM. So I've recently now taken a lot of my business into the media space as well.
Mhm.
I have a couple of animated projects as well as some projects that are either going to come out on Hulu or Netflix, just depending on when the agreement is reached. So I've just been working really hard over the past couple of years and really just doing what I love. But, ultimately my goal is to have a stronger workforce that is inspired to pursue STEM because I think it's cool. As cool as I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting take on it where you make STEM fun. So Justin, is there like a typical day for you? Can you describe what that looks like to us?
So my days are actually very atypical. I don't really have like a schedule that I follow or a routine that I follow even. Generally, I'm responding to, what's on my agenda for a weekly speaking appearance or a training session. So
Okay.
a lot of times these things are booked 3 or 4 months in advance. And on average, at least before the COVID-19 situation, I was getting probably about 2 speaking engagements a week. And these things can be in any part of the world at this point. And so, a lot of my time is spent traveling to those things, and obviously
I
preparing.
did see you had a heavy travel schedule this year.
Yeah, and it was actually
Dubai and
Dubai, Bahamas, Australia. Yeah, and it was
pretty
supposed to
awesome.
be even heavier. Yeah, so I had 10 engagements booked for April, and then another
Wow.
7 for May. So that's in April. That's over 2 a week,
Right.
and then and then there's training on top of that as well. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest part of my business these days, and it's all focused around STEM. So I
Mhm.
speak about preparing kids for Generation Z kids specifically for STEM careers in the future. And then also with kids, I speak to them about how they can get into STEM and then walk them through some practical tips for that.
Awesome. So what do you think like the biggest challenge is when you're trying to get kids engaged in STEM?
I think, these days, when I first entered this game, I really thought that, it was going to be a tough sell just making kids intrigued by this. But what I found is that with the proper marketing, with the proper messaging, a lot of kids really don't feel like it's that unattainable, or it's that weird, or it's that uncool. It's really just about, hey, I'm a guy like you. You kind of can see yourself in my shoes in a few years, and hey, I chose this STEM thing, but guess what? Look at all these dope perks. And so, that's kind of been my approach. I haven't, I think a lot of stuff that I do is not rocket science. It's just having put the hours in to, one, obviously get good at spreading my message in a way that leaves a lasting impression on the audiences and
Mhm.
the educators, but also to have built a brand that's large enough to always have inbound requests to do more stuff. And so, you know, obviously that took time. It took 3 years to get to that point, you know, of consistent incoming requests to speak. To the point where I have to turn down a lot of stuff these days.
Mm-hmm. Understandable. If you had to describe like your ultimate experience, like this one instance that captures your excitement and was like listed as your most rewarding experience, what would it be?
So it actually would be before I even started Fascinate.
Okay.
So, you know, one of the experiences, and we've had so many bigger ones since I've done this, but I used to volunteer at museums when I first graduated from college, just to try and really figure this out, the essence of this problem. Why is it that kids from urban neighborhoods like mine disengage from STEM? And so what I found was I would go into these museums and see all these exhibits that were presented in ways that were not very palatable to the student population that was observing them. They would look at them and they would think, well, this isn't for me. This isn't for kids like where I grew up. And so
Right.
I kind of found myself being like the code switching interpreter of the material. So I would, you know, sometimes I'd wrap the material to the students. Sometimes I would just, you know, just present it in a more engaging way that they found more compelling and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually after one of these kind of volunteer experiences, one of these little kids, you had to be like 9 or 10, came up to me and he said, "Hey man, what do you do?" And I said, "Hey man, I'm a scientist." And he said, "Really?" He was like, "You're my uncle, man." He dapped me up. He said, "I want to be a scientist like you when I grow up." And this was a young black kid. He's from the inner city in DC, from the southeast side of DC. And so he's from a neighborhood a lot like my own on the south side of Chicago, where I never saw anyone that was interested in being a scientist as a kid. And so, you know, I felt like in that moment, you know, that spark was created in him. And so I thought at that point, how do I create that at scale? And so we've had a lot more magical moments like that with thousands of kids all over the world since then.
Awesome. So I know a portion of your business model includes a not-for-profit arm.
Yep.
Can you talk to us about the Magic Cool Bus? I love that phrase, by the way.
Yeah, so the Magic Cool Bus is a mobile STEM lab. It's kind of like Wakanda on wheels. We're building a bus that's going to travel and excite kids in the New York City area first, all about STEM. So if any of the people that are watching this remember the TV show Pimp My Ride from MTV, I was just meeting with him in November out in LA. We actually convinced him to participate in building our bus. So it's going to be this tricked out STEM bus with these 3D printers and mini drones to provide these pop-up exciting STEM events for kids in places that wouldn't otherwise get access to the material, right? We can't expect kids that are really far away or maybe don't have the income to, you know, afford a museum bus visit or a train back and forth to get those kind of STEM enrichment experiences. But also there's gadgets and gear in these schools that the gadgets and gears that we have on our bus rather is stuff that the schools usually wouldn't invest money into because it wouldn't be worth it. And so we want to show kids what an electron microscope looks like, or what a massive commercial drone that's, you know, 4 feet by 8 feet tall looks like, you know? And so, you know, these kind of experiences we've already started creating for our kids, and we realize there's such a huge demand for this that we need to build a bus around it. And so to raise the money to build the bus, we started this as a 501c3 nonprofit.
Awesome. It's like we're in such an experiential culture where everything is hands-on and everything is a part of an experience that just completely adds into it. So how can society support your initiative?
So I think what you're saying, how can people directly support?
Yeah, how can the public support your initiative?
So there's ways to sign up to be a volunteer. We have a website, magiccoolbus.org/apply. And, you know, once we get our events back up and running, you know, who knows when that will be at this point, then we'll have, you know, opportunities for volunteers to come in and work with our kids. We just did a massive drone race in December for over 10,000 kids in Brooklyn. And so, you know, there's all these kind of awesome experiences there. But then also, you know, feel free to reach out to me personally at fascinatesci@gmail.com. You know, we're always looking for more help with building our websites, communicating to our volunteers, to our email list, our social channels. And we also do a lot of online content creation as well. And so, you know, we could use a lot of support with that. We have a manager now. And so we've worked with a lot of cool organizations to do all these things, but we're always looking for more people, especially people with diverse backgrounds and stories to tell. Because a lot of times with, you know, I think the biggest key sometimes is not only, you know, providing these kids with these exciting, engaging experiences, but the actual volunteer force that we have, 237 the last time I looked at the spreadsheet, is mostly
That's
people.
impressive.
Yeah, I mean, in the past couple of years, we were able to build this volunteer force, and almost every single one of these people is a person of color, and 95% of them have a background in STEM of some sort. They're scientists, chemists, engineers,
Wow.
mathematicians. A lot of them are women, and so
Mhm.
they come and they tell their story, and it just makes this field seem that much more real to these kids, because they look up and they see someone 10, 20 10, 15, 20 years older than them, and they're like, oh, this is actually a possible thing.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I absolutely, if you can't tell, absolutely
You're
love what
so
I do.
passionate about it. Your energy exudes through the screen.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think, people that jump on with us and that have, stayed consistently as a part of our team, the Magic Cool crew, they're equally passionate about this as well. And they bring all their own skills to the table.
Awesome. So if there was one thing that you could leave us with about everything you're working on, the innovation that you are a part of, and the impact that you're making, what would that be?
That's a really good question. I only got one thing, so I want to be thoughtful about it.
Be
Let's see.
strategic.
Yeah. Well, I would just say, you know, I see, for the reason I started this business is because I see the potential for, a cure for cancer, a solution to world hunger, maybe a permanent solution to future pandemics. Now that that's a major issue, being trapped in the minds of one of these kids that hasn't been inspired to pursue a career in STEM, just because they never saw it as possible, they never saw it as palatable. And so,
Mhm.
with Fascinate, what we do on the for-profit and nonprofit side, I aspire to inspire that kid, to make that kid feel like this thing is possible. And maybe that kid will grow up 10, 20 years later and actually develop something that will change the landscape of STEM as we know it, because it's a field that's been dominated pretty much for the past 200 years by a monolithic group of people. And
Absolutely.
now we're trying to change the face of that, because we see that innovation can only happen when you have a huge diversity of perspective. And so, that
Yeah.
we want to be a catalyst to that.
Agreed. And I appreciate your time, Justin. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. And I look forward to great things from you and Fascinate and the Magic Cool Bus.
Yeah, same here. And thank you again, Victoria. Hopefully your students, your colleagues get something from this as well.
Awesome. Thank you.